Started.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Tuesday evenings. It's good to see everybody here. It's almost like a family reunion on a Tuesday evening. We're going to continue our series, and I'm going to just share my screen over here. Okay. Right, we are ending off our little story on the nerves, etc. And a couple of interesting ones this week. So I'm just picking up from where we were last week, as per usual, just because this is a recording. This is all done as an excerpt from the book written by Dr. Jim McAfee, who is a clinical nutritionist, and it's called Your Body's Sign Language. And we need to listen carefully to our bodies because they're talking sometimes quite loudly to us on a daily basis. This week, we are carrying on, but we're hitting the mental health side. And we're going to start off with schizophrenia. And this consists of things like hallucinations, fears, disorientation, confusion, and incoherence. And the early signs of schizophrenia in young adulthood include nervousness, restlessness, depression, anxiety, having trouble concentrating, unclear thinking, diminished self-confidence, low energy levels, severe decline in work or school performance, and social withdrawal. Now, these symptoms could also be part of things like ADD, ADHD, depression, or even other issues. So the symptoms cover quite a wide range. So it's not always easy to figure out exactly what the problem is. So if in doubt, once again, please consult a trained medical professional. Probably start off with a psychiatrist who can then refer you to a psychologist if necessary. Schizophrenia can make an individual incapable of normal functioning. That's a very scary thought because you look at a person, they look fine, but inside they're anything but fine. And obviously now everybody's wearing masks, but I think we've been wearing masks for a very, very long time. And the trouble is right now we can see the masks that we're wearing, but we've been wearing facial masks for a very long time that you can't see. And things like schizophrenia is one of them. Some immune cells line the gut that produce a chemical messenger called interleukin-2. Who would have thought that your problem with your gut could affect your brain and your way of thinking? Some people have described the gut as the second brain. Schizophrenia is common in those with gluten intolerance. Wow, that was news for me. And it's, again, looking at the signs, go back through the recordings. If you've got the book, work back through the book, and you'll see the common thread rolling through. Again, digestion plays a big role. Food allergies, food intolerances play a major role in a huge number of symptoms. You go to a professional and they'll diagnose a this or a that or a something else condition, when actually it's quite possibly a food intolerance or a food allergy. A simple thing causing a complex problem. And this may be a common trigger for activation of the white blood cells that line the digestive tract to produce this interleukin. And if you go to a doctor, they're going to take blood from you to try and work out if there's an infection or to try and work out where the problem is. And if there's an infection somewhere, you will see an increase in the white blood cells. Those with rheumatoid arthritis and depression have a totally different kind of immune activation called interleukin-1 and a far less incidence of schizophrenia than the general population. Another interesting fact over there, because those rheumatoid and depression are very often, or specifically rheumatoid arthritis, is an autoimmune condition. Maybe depression is as well. I don't know. It has been found that fasting for up to 30 days allows up to 70% of patients recovering from schizophrenia. Wow. And Dr. Jim McAfee is probably one of the leading experts on fasting, because when he was doing his degree, he did his dissertation on fasting, the good and the bad. Now, fasting eliminates food allergens, allows the digestive tract to heal, and cleanses the digestive tract of harmful bacteria. Those little bugs in your gut can cause a huge number of problems. They might be very small, but oh boy, do they cause problems. Schizophrenics are often deficient in several nutrients, including vitamin C, zinc, magnesium, and vitamins B6 and B3. Again, we can see how the vitamin Bs work together. So B3 goes with B6, B2 goes with B12. Those sort of synonym workings are very, very important. So you can't just take a vitamin B6 or a vitamin B3 or a B12, etc., because they need to work together. It's the same as taking cement. Without adding water, it's useless. Once you add the cement and the water, you have concrete, you have something solid. But if you just have the cement or just have the water, absolutely useless. The omega-6 fatty acid, DGLA, may be deficient as well. I won't go into what the meaning of the word of the letters DGLA is, but know that it's one of the omega-6 fatty acids. One of the symptoms of pellagra, which is an extreme B3 deficiency, is mental illness. Dr. Abram Hoffer, who is a Canadian psychiatrist, used high doses of B3 and C to treat schizophrenia with some very good results. Early researchers on pellagra found that 60 times more niacin was required to treat pellagra than was necessary to prevent it. Again, we can see prevention is significantly easier, cheaper, and oftentimes less painful than treatment. Doctors Hart and Chow reviewed over 200 scientific studies and concluded that the shortage of a single essential vitamin, mineral element, amino acid, or fatty acid will create a shockwave that spreads to affect the utilization and or function of every other essential nutrient. Now here we can see a brilliant summary of how vital good, proper nutrition is, because you can have a protein, you can have an amino acid, you can have a vitamin, you can have a mineral, but until they are working together, you're going to have a problem. Nature loves everything to be together. You take one thing out and you're going to cause an imbalance of note. So that is why when you look at our products specifically, they've been so carefully formulated to work together, to take food in its natural form with all the trace elements and the minerals and the amino acids, and they're all put together and kept together in a supplement. Whereas a synthetic supplement will give you a vitamin B3, a vitamin C, a vitamin B12, but it's not giving you everything else. And that is so important, to have everything working together. Asking the body or brain to function without an essential nutrient may be likened to asking a musician to play an orchestral piece with a violin that has a broken string. Now, there are some talented musicians out there, and I've personally seen a very talented guitarist take what I thought was a broken guitar with couple of strings missing and actually make a tune out of it. It wasn't a very complex tune, but he could make a tune out of it. And I think our bodies do a similar thing. They will keep you alive, they'll keep you functioning, but they won't keep you operating at optimum health. It's a little bit like driving down the freeway with a tire or with a wheel that should have 4 bolts holding it. You can drive that car with 3 bolts holding your tire on, but I wouldn't go much faster than about 80 k's an hour. If you want optimum speed, you want all 4 of those bolts holding your tire on. Suggestions. Consider the possibility of acquired dependence for a larger than normal amount of some nutrients. Again, as I've said before in one of the previous sessions that I've done, it's been likened to an army practicing. They go to the shooting range and they shoot off a few rounds of bullets. In a war, they're going to shoot off a significant number of more bullets than when they're practicing on the shooting range. Very much the same as our bodies. For normal life, they need a certain number of nutrients. But should there be an imbalance somewhere, should there be an illness, a disease, or a danger area where we're exposed to toxins, etc., we often need more than just one of those things. So, for instance, you can probably get by with 1 carotenoid a day. But should your immune system be compromised, you want to take 3 to 6 carotenoids per day because your body is now at war and it needs the extra nutrients. When I had COVID in January, normally I take a handful of supplements on a daily basis. But when I had COVID, I had to double and sometimes treble my dosage of certain things, like carotenoids, vitamin C. I doubled up on my zinc. And I added extra things from what I would normally use because I knew that my body needed those extra nutrients. And they worked really, really well. We need to consume only high quality oils, not the old rotten fast food oils, the high quality oils like your omega-3s. And these oils include your olive oils, your peanut oils, your grapeseed oils, your pure oils, not cheaper oils like sunflower oil, but your higher grade quality oils. We need to eliminate gluten and other allergens in the diet. Again, as I've stated before, if you think just possibly that you may have a food allergy or a food intolerance, please get yourself tested and checked. There's a whole battery of tests that need to be done to check and see what, in fact, you are allergic to. Sometimes, sadly enough, it means being hospitalized for a day or two to run those tests under controlled manners, but probably worth it in the long run because then you know what to avoid, what you can actually enjoy. It can make the difference between a trouble-free life and a problem life. In gluten, while gluten itself isn't always the problem, gluten was put into nature for a specific reason. But in today's lifestyle, a lot of people sadly have become gluten intolerant, and now we're having to remove the gluten from the different products. And we need to supplement with vitamin C, zinc, and vitamin B complex. Never just a single B on its own, but the complex. And we know we've got a vitamin C complex, zinc, obviously in a chelated form in order for us to improve the absorption rate. And then our B complex that has extended lifespan basically, or sustained release, should I say, to keep it in your system for up to 8 hours instead of, because it's a water-soluble supplement, flushing out in a fairly short space of time. Just like the vitamin C is also sustained release for the same reason. Next thing, sense of humor. Who would have thought that a sense of humor could be linked to your diet? That on its own is quite funny, I think, but maybe not so funny. And your sense of humor could be a lack of a sense of humor. And this is the inability to laugh at humorous stories or incidents. A lot of people are stressed these days, and I think the sense of humor is a little bit low. Maybe because of the stress, they're missing some nutrients. If you see somebody who's not really getting your joke or really laughing or just enjoying life, go and have a chat to them. Maybe you could help them. A loss of sense of humor accompanies deficiency of vitamins B3 or the B complex. Again, we don't know exactly which of the Bs your body needs at any time. So you take the B complex and it will use what it needs. And remember, when you are stressed, your vitamin B levels drop. Now we see the result. Dr. Tom Spess, who is a nutritionist, observed that when his patients were short-tempered and swimmy-headed, that was an interesting word for me, and could not laugh at a funny story, they were often deficient in B3. A simple thing, but man, it could make a big difference. The B complex vitamins are central to the use of carbohydrates for the energy production necessary to fuel brain cells. Remember, we spoke a little while back, your brain is a glucose hog and has need of a huge amount of carbohydrates. The rest of your body doesn't need the carbohydrates, but your brain does. And if your cells don't have the energy, think of your cell phone that's running on in red and on about 1 bar, or your car that's pointing to the E, which doesn't mean enough, means empty, you're not going to get very far. Deficiencies of these vitamins are known to influence mood. And I must say, I've noticed that, because if my B levels are low, I get stressed. If I get stressed, my sense of humor tends to go out the window. So if somebody's getting stressed around you, offer them some vitamin B. It may well be true that the most pleasing personalities among those we know are contributed to in a significant way by superior nutrition. And isn't that interesting? Because when you attend a near-life function, a live near-life function, have you not noticed that everybody in that hall are happy, cheerful, and have high energy levels? Could that possibly be that they're taking superior nutrition? I don't know, you decide. Excessive intake of sugar, illness, nutrient deficiencies, and consumption of foods to which one is allergic may also contribute to a poor disposition. In other words, if things are out of alignment in the body, your person is not a happy camper. And have you ever felt that? Maybe you forgot to take supplements for a while, or things have been really, really stressful, and you're not feeling quite your normal self. Maybe it's a problem because you're not eating properly or taking enough supplements, something along those lines. Look at it, check it out. Suggestions. Again, we see this common thread. Avoid refined carbohydrates, especially sugar. Remembering that sugar, when we talk about sugar, most of us think of that white crystalline stuff that we put in our tea and coffee. Yes, that is sugar. That is a simple carbohydrate. We need the complex carbohydrates where your body can get its own sugar out of there. We don't need the man-made version of sugar. So your refined carbohydrates are your breads, your pastas, your chips, which are not whole grain, your sweets, your desserts, your added sugars, all those fun things that can actually be quite dangerous for us. The odd one now and again, not a problem. But please don't make this a standard, regular thing in your diet. And sadly, a lot of these things are a standard, regular diet for a lot of people. Why? Pasta's cheap. Sweets are often cheap. People go for cheap. Cheap can often be extremely expensive. We need to avoid brain-damaging heavy metals, pesticides, and other toxic chemicals. So maybe you're living in an area that's close to a factory or an oil refinery or something along those lines, or because you're drinking water from a source that may have been contaminated by heavy metals. You're eating fish that has been caught off of Durban Harbour or Cape Town Harbour or any of these big harbours where there's a huge amount of heavy metals and pesticides and toxic chemicals in the water, which the fish are then ingesting and we're eating. So be careful of those sorts of things. And we need to eat a healthy, balanced diet. Don't we always hear that from all over the place? You need to eat a balanced, healthy diet and you will be fine. You don't need to supplement. Well, how many of us actually do get to eat a healthy diet? Your healthy eating plate includes your veggies, your fats, your healthy protein, and your whole grains. How often does your plate look like that? We need to supplement with vitamin B complex and quality oils. And I remember John Miller talking on one of the recordings that I was listening to one day, and he'd been speaking to Dr. Arthur First, who said he doesn't know how people can survive if they do not get adequate vitamin B in their diets. So hands up if you got your vitamin B this morning. I can't see your hands, but I know I got my vitamin B this morning. That vitamin B is so, so crucial to keeping your system operating at optimum and to detox yourself. The quality oils are our whole grain oils and the salmon oils. That is your omega-6 to omega-3 in a good combination, not a bad combination. Omega-6 isn't all bad. We do need it in our system, but the problem with today's diet is we get way more omega-6 than we get of omega-3. We need to get that balance back together again. Now, this is something that a good few years ago we were hearing quite a bit of. Fortunately, I know I haven't heard too much of this recently. And it's a thing called sudden infant death syndrome, or SIDS. And what happens is somebody would take a young child, sort of like my granddaughter, who's healthy, happy, put them down on the cot, go off and do something, come back a little bit later, and their child is dead. And there's no known reason. There's no suffocation. There's no outward signs of trauma or anything. The child has just died. That is very, very scary and obviously very traumatic. But what could cause it? A simple thing that could indicate a vitamin C deficiency or heavy metal poisoning. Again, be careful, because your SIDS happens in an infant, and an infant hopefully is being breastfed by mommy. What is mommy eating? Or more importantly, what is mommy not eating? When an infant has scurvy or severe vitamin C deficiency, there is a tendency to lie on the back and to make little effort to move the arm or leg that hurts. With scurvy, you have pain in the joints. This is because the tissues deprived of vitamin C are painful, and this pain is one of the earliest signs of scurvy. Take your little one, touch them gently, and they start to scream. Maybe it's time to check them out and see if you're getting sufficient vitamin C in your diet if you are feeding your baby. An infant with scurvy may also cry a great deal or engage in high-pitched screaming, especially when limbs are touched or moved and they bruise easily. Very scary signs. And especially when you're having to deal with an infant, you can't actually tell you, don't touch me, it hurts. Since young children cannot tell parents something is wrong, the astute parent should look for signs that intake may be inadequate, intake of vitamin C, that is. So check your child's diet. You know somebody who's complaining about their baby, they're always screaming and there's no real reason. Find out what it is that they're feeding their baby or not feeding their baby. It's quite possible that they're low in vitamin C. Be aware of heavy metals in baby clothing, paint, and bedding. Now, paint that was put on babies' cots often was very high in lead. I think they've now taken, or the law has come into effect that you may not have lead in paint anymore. But lead was in a lot of things in the early days. Also, your baby might be wearing cotton, but how was that cotton grown? How many pesticides were used to make that cotton? I think it was Louis Smith who said that the cotton industry is one of the areas of agriculture that uses the highest number of pesticides. That is heavy poison that's going in. How are they washing those clothes? Maybe they're either not getting sufficient problems out of there or adding more toxins into the clothes that your baby with its very sensitive skin is wearing. What's in the bedding, etc. Be aware of those things. Suggestions. Be especially cautious when body temperature is elevated, as this increases the risk of release of toxic gases. And this can be caused by too many blankets. Have you ever seen any of these babies who are, it's 32 degrees outside, and babies, this little thing in the middle, surrounded by a dirty great big blanket? I used to see that up in Zululand when I was up in Empangeni, and I felt so sorry for those children. I'm sure they must be cooking inside there. And do not immunize infants when they are ill. I'm not saying do not immunize infants, I'm saying when they are not well, hang off, hang about. Speak to your pediatrician if in doubt before they get immunized, because when they're ill, the immune system is already compromised, could make things worse. You need to make sure that the nutritional intake is adequate and includes sufficient vitamin C intake. That word says inadequate, it should be adequate. So check out what your baby is getting or not getting, and if necessary, supplement. And with children, we have the chewable OC. We also have the Liquivite. Liquivite is probably one of the best and easiest ways of ensuring that an infant, because it can be given from day one, is getting sufficient nutrition. Have infants sleep on their back, because that also helps to keep their airways open. And take steps to make sure that mattresses are wrapped and toxic materials are not present in mattresses or bedding materials. And one of those ways is to check and see, what are you washing the baby's bedding with? What sort of laundry detergent are you using? Does it have toxins in it? As we know, a lot of laundry detergents these days have got fillers, which are full of toxins. Check it out, be careful, ask questions. And that is the end of that. So I'm going to stop sharing. And if anybody has any comments or questions, I'm going to open the floor. I don't have time to get into the next session just yet, but we do still have a few minutes. Any testimonies? Do you know of anybody who has had a child that's been lost through SIDS or suffers from schizophrenia, etc.? I'm open. Okay, good.
And
I'm going
also, SIDS can be caused by a respiration that becomes too slow. When that respiration goes around about 20 in an infant, the heart stops as well.
Okay, what should a normal respiration be?
30 to, I think it's 60 for a baby.
Okay. Then a baby's pulse is also significantly faster than an adult's pulse.
Can go right up to 120 and be quite normal.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'm going to stop recording now